I call on County Clerk Susan Mabry to call the roll.
Chairman Michelle Morgan.
Here.
Vice Chairman George Chambers.
Here.
Commissioner Montrell McClendon.
Here.
Commissioner Clint Chance.
Here.
Commissioner Tommy Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Steve Fuller.
Here.
Commissioner Ernie Reynolds.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on Pastor Randy Simpkins of Bowden First United Methodist Church to lead us in our invocation.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan, Commissioners. It's an honor to be here today. I really appreciate the invitation. As I sit here, or I stand here, and look at all of you, I'm reminded of my time sitting in your seat. I remember those days fondly. There were challenges involved, but what I remember is one particular meeting. We had a 7-0 vote, a 6-1 vote, a 5-2 vote, a 4-3 vote. We were very different. I've served with people of different ages, different races, different genders, and we all cared about each other and we loved each other. Today we live in a time where diversity, our differences, are brought to the forefront, and we're sort of instructed or told that if others have different beliefs than us, then we should have issue with that. I think about those days and the fondness of unity, and so I wanted to encourage you guys to continue your leadership with unity in mind. The differences that we are faced with, and I think about Paul. Paul was one of the apostles that Jesus had. There was a couple of guys that Paul was encouraging in the early church. One was named Titus, and he was put in charge of bringing the church forward in an island called Crete. And one of the things he told Titus is, as you look for leaders, find leaders that are not self-willed. The thing that's missing these days, in my opinion, not just in government, not just in our nation, but in what's being taught and what's being promoted, is being not self-willed, as Paul told Titus. He also told another young man named Timothy, who was over a church in Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey. In his letter to Timothy, he said, those who are put in places of authority, those who are in charge, like yourselves, that we are to support them and to pray for them. I know from sitting in that seat, a lot of times you make decisions. If you have 100 people in the room and half are for it and half are against it, half of them are going to walk away upset with you, no matter what your decision is. So I know you're faced with that a lot. I want you to know that every week there are people all throughout this county that are lifting y'all up specifically in prayer. We love you. We appreciate the sacrifices that you do and that your families do. So know that going forward, as you have chosen to step forward and be leaders and to sacrifice your time with your families, know that there are people that appreciate it even though you may not hear it, and there are people that are specifically lifting you up in prayer all throughout. We do it at our church every Sunday. So I wanted y'all to know that, and I pray God's blessings on you and on your families and on your wisdom, and I pray that He'll give you discernment as you move forward leading our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We now have Boy Scout Troop 138 to lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion made.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? You each have a copy of the September 26, 2019 work session, the October 1st, 2019 commission meeting, and the October 1st, 2019 executive session minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed?
Vote approved by 7-0.
The next item on the agenda is public comments. Public comments are just that, an opportunity for the public to address the commission with any issues or concerns they may have. This is not for the board to comment, nor will the board take any action on the comments. There is a sign-up sheet in back, and we will take those comments first. Anyone else wishing to do so, are welcome to. And I ask you to state your name and address. The first person I have is Pastor Randy Simpkins.
My name is Randy Simpkins. I reside at 150 Gold Dust Trail, Carrollton, Georgia, 30117. I haven't spoken to you guys in a long time. I welcome the opportunity. No, Chairman Morgan had asked to share a little bit about what's going on in our community from a ministry standpoint. One thing I want to share with you guys is coming up, Commissioner Chambers, I'm sure, is aware of this. We have coming up a community Thanksgiving service at Copeland Hall on November 21st at 7 p.m. I invite you all. We've been doing it for years, and it's a real show of unity in our community. We have 12 to 15 churches, all different denominations, and we come together and we have a time of worship, and we have a different speaker every year. Our church specifically works a lot with other churches in what's called the Bowden Area United Christian Ministries. It's BAUCM. That's a way for us to work with those who are in need in our community, those who are homeless, those who are poor and needy, that we feel that's a big part of our charge in the church. And so it's a way for us to all come together and work together to meet the needs of those in our community. I welcomed an opportunity for us to think about the ways that we can do something like that countywide. You are in a position of government, we're in a position of ministry, and there's got to be a great way for us to marry those things together to take care of some of the social issues that we have in our county. What a great example that would be to other communities. So I won't tell you all the different ministries and ours is one of many good churches in our community of all different denominations, and they're all throughout this county. So I'm not going to try to tell you all the different things we're involved with, because I don't think that'd be fair to all of them. Just know that this community, there's 82 just Methodist churches in the Carrollton-Rome district alone. That's one of 12 districts in just North Georgia. So all of our different denominations, there's a lot of churches in this county, as you know. So opportunities for us to come together with government and churches to work together, I think, would be a shining example in our community. So thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you. Next on the list, I have Deidre Rouse and Carolyn Gray.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, I'm used to being at the college, and when you say good evening, they say something. So good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. As Commissioner or Chairperson Morgan stated, I'm Deidre Rouse. The address is 1601 Maple Street, Carrollton, Georgia, 30118. And
I thought you were going to introduce me. I'm Carolyn Gray, and it has been 2 years to this date that this project began in this room.
so basically what we want to do is just give you a NICE update. NICE stands for Neighborly Inclusive, Committed to Everyone's Success. Carolyn is passing out, which you will be receiving. We have provided you with a nice updated brochure. We came last month to give you that also. And we're also providing you with a nice quality of life survey for you to please place with your other NICE materials. This survey has been, iterations of it have been done preliminarily as a tester at the Taste of Carrollton with a few of our residents who have come to that particular event. We also met with Chairman Michelle Morgan to review the survey, as well as the University of West Georgia College of Social Sciences Visualization Lab, and as a result, we have been able to implement some of the recommendations. So you'll see there that's a draft. We hope to launch it later this year, early next year. And to our knowledge, a quality of life survey has not been conducted in Carroll County. We just want to take a moment to tell you we thank you for continuing to support and serve as honorary co-chairs of this NICE project. It's turned into something larger, but we think it will be definitely quality work for our county, since we all strive to make Carroll County a better place for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. We now have a special presentation for Keep Carroll Beautiful by Jacqueline Doss, the chairperson of Keep Carroll Beautiful Board. And she's going to update us on some changes to our recycling program.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your water bottles. Thank you, Commission Chair Morgan, for the opportunity to speak to you and the commissioners today about changes to the recycling program for plastic and glass in Carroll County effective Monday, November the 11th, 2019. As many of you are aware, over the past several years, the value of recyclables worldwide has decreased as levels of contamination have increased. In addition, the cost of transporting recyclables has increased due to higher fuel and insurance costs. Keep Carroll Beautiful, in partnership with the County Department of Public Works and SLM Recycling, the contractor who manages the county convenience centers, have met and discussed some very practical changes to the recycling program in Carroll County. Beginning Monday, November the 11th, the convenience centers at Noonan Road and Dyer Road will be the only sites where water bottles, soda bottles, and milk jugs can be recycled. These plastics are identified with a number 1 or number 2 inside of the recycling symbol. This will ensure that the quality and value of the recycling stream collected in Carroll County is maintained. The value of other plastic recyclables no longer covers the cost of collection and processing. In fact, there is virtually no market domestically for plastics other than those listed above, number 1 and 2. The second change is the elimination of glass from the recycling program at all convenience centers. Once again, this is a lack of the demand for glass cullet, which is the product that is made from the process of recycling glass. Glass is basically inert. It is melted sand. The recycling of glass actually creates more of an environmental footprint than it saves, meaning that there is a zero positive environmental benefit to the recycling of glass once you factor in transportation costs. As of tomorrow, Keep Carroll Beautiful, in partnership with the county, will be launching an education initiative called Recycle Right to ensure that this information is delivered to the residents of Carroll County. New Carroll County Convenience Center cards have been printed and will be distributed around the county. Keep Carroll Beautiful's website will have this information, and there will be regular social media posts informing the public of these changes. The county website will direct residents to this information as well. There will be new signs at the convenience centers where plastic can be recycled, showing the types of bottles accepted. In addition, Keep Carroll Beautiful has arranged for the donation of several billboards around the county for a short period of time to spread the Recycle Right message. This education program is aimed at helping the public understand that just because an item has a recycling symbol on it does not automatically mean that it can be recycled. There will be no changes to the other items that are accepted at the convenience centers. Aluminum, tin, cardboard, and paper will continue to be collected at the centers where they are accepted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
We're now going to move into the financial session. Before I call on the Finance Director Alicia Searcy, who presented our financial recap at our work session last Thursday. Does anybody have any questions from that presentation on Thursday?
I've got a couple of questions, Madam Chair. I spent a little more time with Ms. Searcy today, and I appreciate the opportunity. When I look at the under revenues, when we're looking at interest, I know that had been budgeted pretty low last year at $60,500, and it's my understanding Ms. Searcy renegotiated with some of our financial institutions and brought that up, and I appreciate that. I guess my question is, we've nearly tripled that budget amount to over tripled, nearly quadrupled to $211,600, but our interest coming in is a little bit higher than prior year to date, and I just want to make sure that, I guess, that we're staying on top of that to make sure that number is going to be coming through for us by the end of the year as far as any market changes or anything that's going on at the bank.
Well, the banks have had decreases in their interest rates that they're paying. SunTrust is holding where they have been, but Banco ZK has reduced the amount of interest as a percentage that they're paying. we have looked at and will continue to look at some CD products that may allow us to increase that percentage back up closer to where we had budgeted it. Right now, we are trending slightly lower than budget on the interest income, and I think if we can find a CD product that will work, that we can get back on track to make the projection, even though Banco ZK did reduce the amount of interest, but interest rates in general are down.
Okay, I appreciate you keeping a check on that. On page 2, when we're looking at P&Z, I know we're up slightly from last year as far as what we budgeted, but we've had looks like about $130,000 increase from prior year to date. When we look at current year to date, I'm just wondering if there's anything going on there, if that's any type of issue.
Well, we've got a timing difference with the payment that we make to Three Rivers. Last year that payment was made in December, and this year it was expensed in October. I'm sorry, in September. So that's the difference it's about a $118,000 payment that we're responsible to Three Rivers.
So that'll probably shore up next month in the October financials.
Well, for sure in December,
Okay.
when that payment was made last year.
Okay. And then my final question on page 3, when we're looking at the energy excise tax, we had prior year budget at $300,000. We went up significantly to $450,000, yet we're trending lower in that tax revenue if you look at year to date.
That's going to be corrected in October. As I stated at the work session, we had an accounting change on the excise tax where we were writing checks back to the city and taking it against the revenue. Now we're actually expensing that. So the first quarter checks were written to the cities and taken out of that revenue line, and we have made an adjustment to that in October. So the October excise tax is at $232,000, and that includes the adjustment. So going forward, we should be on track with that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Searcy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next, we have our consent agenda. All the items under the consent agendas were previously discussed at the work session last Thursday, October 31st. That work session video is now available for viewing on the county's website. I will read each of the items to be considered, and then we'll take a single vote for all items. 10.1, Budget Amendment for fiscal year 2018-2019. 10.2, Environmental Facilities Agreement with Carroll County Water Authority. 10.3, the appointment for Region 6. And 10.4, a streetlight special tax district establishment. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion made.
Do I have a second? Okay, great. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great, thank you. Before moving into the zoning session, I would like to read the policies and procedures governing the conduct of zoning hearings. The applicant or anyone speaking in favor of the application request shall be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present their request. Anyone opposed to the request shall also have a total of 10 minutes to present their opposition. If there are multiple speakers for or against an application, ask them to please be mindful to allow others to speak should they wish to do so. Anyone speaking for or against the application shall be allowed a total of 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. I'm now going to call on the county planner, Janet Hyde, for our zonings.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. Excuse me. The first item that I have on the agenda tonight is a conditional use for a Verizon cell phone tower at 2547 Travis Hill Drive. This is near the Triangle. This is application C-19-09-02. This is land lot 140 of the 5th District, parcel 130-0360. This is in Commission District 5. Verizon Wireless initially applied for this application requesting a tower that was 225 feet tall. And they were requesting a tower that was the lattice type tower. In the process of evaluation, they decided to withdraw that application for the 225 height and reduce the height to 200 feet. We had some opposition from the neighborhood, and so Verizon has now said that they will do a monopole tower and that it will be less than the 200-foot height in order that it does not have to be lit. So they've made some concessions there to try to be more neighborhood friendly, I guess. I'll let the Verizon representative speak a little bit more about that. But staff has recommended approval of this, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone present to speak in favor of this conditional use request?
Good evening, Madam Chairman, excuse me, and Commission and Board. My name is Wendy Doyle, and I work with Doyle Consulting on behalf of Verizon Wireless. Verizon Wireless is seeking approval this evening for a tower, as Janet, Ms. Hyde had mentioned. It would be located at 2547 Travis Hill Drive. We initially did come to the Commission. The design was for a 235-foot self-support tower. We spoke with the Planning and Zoning Department. They suggested, could you possibly, have you looked at it to where you really need a variance? We went back, reevaluated. My RF engineers said that they could live with 200 feet. They discussed it some more and said, okay, could you possibly not have it lit? So that request came over last week. So as of today, I did receive approval to go with the 190-foot monopole, which is just the single pole, not a lattice type structure. That will be 90 feet. The apparatuses will not reach over 200 feet. Therefore, it will not be required by the FAA to be lit. So we hope that in making the considerations and the changes will be more appealing to the board and to the residents of the area. Just to let you know why we're looking for a tower in this area, Verizon has been giving a lot of information that a lot of the citizens in the Fairfield area and the northern Carrollton, sort of the northeast area of that intersection of Highway 61 and Highway 166, referred to as the Triangle, is in need of capacity issues. You could have a call out there, but you're going to be dropping your calls. You may be able to place that call, but during your conversation, it's having issues. So the engineer designed a site location of a quarter of a mile radius around the Triangle area, actually around the commercial area of the Triangle. They then assigned it for us to go find properties. Obviously, the first thing we do is we go look at the ordinance and we see where we're allowed to go. We see where it's favorable to go. We see what the conditions are. We see what we have to do to meet these conditions. After reviewing that quarter of a mile, we found a commercial area where the Hill property is located. Their property is strategically located in the middle of other commercial zone properties. We do meet all the setbacks, all the requirements. This tower will meet all the FAA regulated safety. It meets all the environmental, state SHPO compliance issues. Verizon it usually takes Verizon about 6 to 9, sometimes 12 months to get all the approvals from the state, local, regulatory to build a cell tower. So there are several issues that you may be concerned about as far as, did we look at the properties closer to the interstate? There is another tower that's outside of that area that's a Global Tower Partners tower, in case some of you are wondering. It's now owned by American Tower, but you may not have become aware of that. That tower is a 190-foot self-support tower. It is located along Highway 166, but it's further towards Carrollton. It's actually further away from the objective that we're trying to cover. It's actually 0.65 miles away from where we're proposing this tower now. We did look at that, and to your kudos, I guess, you have mandated that co-locations are favorable, and that's why that tower has 4 existing carriers on that tower at this time. And the height that Verizon need is not available on that tower. It's almost full, so congratulations. And so Verizon is actually proposing the 190-foot tower on the Hills property in order to extend more coverage and capacity for the Fairfield area, if you were looking at a map, the Fairfield area and along the intersection. So I have more, but I'll save that for later, so.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody
And
else that wants to speak in favor of this?
Well, I do have the Hills here. I do have Travis and Latrina here, but you know, if we have discussed everything, and they have indicated to me that there's several. When the letters went out to all the property owners around, they have found more people that are in favor of it and can't wait to have their technologies working. As you all know, it's not just a cell phone that we're trying to provide capacity for. It's the use of these cell phones. It's the use of your tablets. It's the use of computers. It's the use for everything. The more and more technology becomes necessary, the more and more demand is going to be needed on these existing poles. Verizon does have existing poles in the area. This one is located strategically, and I believe that information was provided to you in your package that Ms. Hyde might have already given to you, so you had an opportunity. I won't rehash the location of the RF maps for you, as I understand you've looked at it, but if you have questions for me, I would be glad to answer those.
Great, thank you. At this time, is there anyone that wants to speak in rebuttal to this?
Madam Chairman and Board, hello. My name is Wesley Wilvert. I live at 2531 Pleasant Hill Road in Carrollton, Georgia, 30116. I'm here tonight to express to the Board how the proposed location of Verizon's livestock tower will place an undue hardship on me and my family. I'd like to draw your attention to the section, and forgive me for reading, but it says what I want. So I'd like to draw your attention to the section of Verizon's application to Carroll County Title Review Criteria and Standards for considering conditional use permits. As required by Carroll County, Verizon did not, in my opinion, document or prove their assertions there would be no harm to the adjacent land. In fact, their answers simply stated that various criteria had all been met, sometimes only with one word. While the proposed location may seem to be ideal for Verizon's conditional use application, the proof of this proposed use and consequent no harm to the adjacent land must fall to Verizon and not this individual landowner. It appears due diligence was not done. Our property has been a residence for 170 years. It should absolutely be viewed as such rather than as a commercial property. Unfortunately, if this tower is built, our residential property will decline in value. One analysis I found describes our dilemma well. It summarizes a significant negative impact is assigned to those properties having a full or obvious view of a tower. I've found many additional articles delineating how property values suffer when a property is located within the visual distance of a cell tower. These references are in my prior briefs that I've submitted to the board. I would ask each of you, would you like to have a cell tower in your backyard? In the Planning Commission's meeting, Verizon's representative used the National Association of Realtors website to back up their position that property values are not affected by cell towers. An article I found on the National Association of Realtors website vaguely supports this contention, but there are other articles on the same webpage which state properties will be devalued due to a cell tower. For example, on the same National Association of Realtors page, there's one article dated July 20, 2019, which writes about the first report of 5G injury coming out of Switzerland. From this article, it appears that the National Association of Realtors supports concerns that 5G will negatively affect property values. In addition to property value concerns, we feel the proposed tower should be viewed as a health hazard. as the higher frequencies and higher energies associated with 5G will eventually be accepted as being detrimental. I'd like to know if Verizon has proposed alternate tower locations, if they've adequately researched this. If market forces for improved and expanded cellular service were enough to avoid local insults, Carroll County would be obliged to approve every application virtually without regard to the impact on the surrounding area. We believe it's the board's obligation to look out for the little guy and protect us against the overreach of those who would build what they want, how they want, and where they want. And that's it. Do you have any questions?
Not at this time. We'll ask questions in a little bit.
Thank you.
There's still time left. Is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition of this? I'll ask again, is there anybody that would like to come forward and speak in opposition? Okay. Is there a rebuttal from those that are in favor of the conditional use request? And you have 5 minutes.
Mr. Wilford, I appreciate your concerns, and Mr. Wilford and I did speak before the meeting to try to help address some of his other concerns. And I do want to mention, he was mentioning the National Association of Realtors, and yes, it is a lengthy article, and yes, it is a lengthy website. And yes, if you went and you Googled "Are cell towers dangerous?" you're going to find one opinion from one person that says it may be. The thing that we are regulated by is the FCC, and they are highly, that's your federal regulations that say they provide which parameters you can operate in. And as we were talking before, Mr. Fuller, about the 5G, just to educate you a little, right now 5G is being tested in Atlanta to see if that's working well. It is not in, it's only in metro areas right now across the country. Does Verizon want to eventually have good coverage and good capacity for everyone? Yes, of course they do. But are they going to do it without and not in the regulations? No, they won't. They have to comply within FCC regulations. And we do have documentation that Verizon does comply with that. Also, if you looked up, other articles, you'll find things mentioned on the CDC webpage that, cell phones possibly are a concern. Cell towers, not unless you actually stand in front of the antenna itself for a period of time does it affect the cells in your body long enough to heat up. So if you're going to climb the tower in front of it and stand in front of it for several hours, then I wouldn't do that. Also, he mentioned the property values are a concern. Just so you know, some of the statistics right now that homeowners and business owners, especially business owners, will not go into and do not want to go into an area where their cell phones coverage do not work and their technology does not work. A lot of parents, a lot of schools are using computers and tablets to do homework now. A lot of homes that don't have that capacity, that capability could be a concern for someone to move into that area. So you can go on the web, you can look up articles in favor of either way. The case that we have here is that currently there is a need, and Verizon would like to fulfill that need with this 190-foot monopole. So we ask that you strongly consider hearing the people who have reached out to us, the people that we've sent repeaters to their homes over in Fairfield Plantation in the Fairfield area to help boost their coverage. We're consistently having to send boosters out there because they need more capacity. So I just really appreciate your consideration at this time.
There's 2 minutes and 17 seconds left. If there's anybody else that would like to speak in favor during the rebuttal. Okay. At this time, is there... okay. Are you speaking in for or in rebuttal? Okay, so I'm at the rebuttal time now, Ms. Alligood, so that's perfect. So you have 5 minutes.
I have land that's a neighbor to Mr. Wilford. And that tower, he's done extensive research on this. And the tower this is his home place. The tower is very close to his home. So we're not asking not to have a tower. We're just asking it to not be so close to him or back it off or find another place. If it's Fairfield that needs the tower. It needs to go a little closer to Fairfield, I think. There's a lot of vacant land up there. And we think you could get it in the middle of a less populated area. I do know that this is a commercial area, but also I have land on the other side, 50 acres, that I would one day like to establish as for homes too. And I feel that we are unaware of a lot of the bad effects of all the tower Ethernet, I guess you would call it. And you say, no, I don't want to stand in front of it, and would be afraid of it. Mr. Wilbert would be very close to it. He would be day and night there. So I just feel like there's a better place for it than right behind his home. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. There's about 3 minutes left. Do you want to respond in rebuttal again?
The main point, and I understand you can't defeat a project like this based on health concerns, but if you folks have looked at my briefs, I don't ignore that issue. I think it's an important issue. Moving forward, once I'm gone, once you guys are gone, somebody else is sitting in your seats, you need to be thinking about this issue. The U.S. Department of Interior says that the FCC's criteria for judging cell phone damage is 30 years out of date because they talk in terms of heat dissipation, whereas in reality, this higher frequency and higher energy 5G and 6G or whatever else is coming down the pike, it's so energetic that it starts deteriorating cell membranes. It's not just heat, it's actual destruction. It's not DNA so much as it's at the cellular level, the cellular membrane level. So it's an issue you need to be mindful of. And basically, my family and I don't want to live under a cell tower. There's a lot of open space towards Fairfield that I think would satisfy Verizon's needs if they put their minds to it, and I would like to see it put somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn this on. Are there any questions for staff or the applicant?
I do have a few questions for both. First, I'll just run through my litany of questions then. So how far physically away from the residence of Mr. Wilbert would this cell tower be?
Mr. Wilbert's property, if I may, is far enough away to meet the setbacks. The actual distance, his property, I believe, which is zoned commercial, would only require a 20-foot setback. And from the actual tower itself, let me just flip over here for a second. Sorry. It might be. May I? You're not going to be able to see this from where I hold up.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be exact, but
It's going to be, from his property line, it's over 100 and, looks to be over 143 feet. Over that, I'm sorry. Over 183 feet it appears to be from his property line.
so within 200 feet of the property line, and of the residence, it would be a little further?
It would be
Do we
further,
have
yes.
Any idea from the residence? Is it?
No, sir, but I can take a look. I can't flip right
Yes.
quick. I apologize.
Well,
I didn't have his specifically noted how
Yeah.
far away from his house that it is.
Yeah, if you could be looking for
But
that.
it does meet with, it does comply.
I know about setbacks.
With
and
the
all that.
setbacks, yes, it does meet the setback requirements.
But if you could be looking at how far away from the residence it is to approximate that, or maybe Janet knows. I just would like to know now before we take a vote on this.
Absolutely.
But I will say, yes, there is, as with every subject, I guess, a balance that we have to reach. There's the one side where people can't operate their cell phones and the kids can't get their schoolwork done because of computers and so on, and we need this type of equipment. There's the other side where we have to be aware of some downside that it may cause to residences, as Mr. Wilbert has pointed out, and degradation of market value of real estate might be one. I'd like to get some feedback about alternative locations, and I don't know, maybe the one you were referring to earlier is the one at the cattle sale barn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not possible to increase the height of that
To
one?
extend that, the way that is a self-support tower, and as it gets taller, it's thinner, and the structural integrity could be compromised to extend that pole. When I did speak with American Tower, who is the current owner, about that, they would not recommend extending that tower just simply because of the structural capacity of it. So they did not recommend that.
All right, so there'd be some fragility involved there if we went higher with that one.
That's correct. You could possibly, go lower, but that would not work from an RF standpoint to project the signal. And not only that, but that tower, like I mentioned before, is much further away from the existing towers that we're trying to cover, to offload. The further west we go, which that site is, the less effective it becomes in trying for the coverage objective. And our engineers had said simply, even if it would work, even if it could be extended even if that tower was really, 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 beefy enough, hold enough to hold an extension and everything, they still felt that a tower closer to their location would provide the better coverage because of the terrain and other issues out there. Okay.
One of the concerns I have, I guess, is not just today, as was mentioned, but is it true that going from a 2 and 3G environment to a 5 and possibly 6 and whatever G down the road, the frequency of 5G and so on being shorter waves requires more cell towers or more frequency in the cell towers?
Well, that question actually was asked earlier, and the way that, as 5G is a new technology that has come out, the way that it is designed is to project in a more streamlined line of sight, not so much like the cone frequencies that come out of the 3G, as you mentioned, and the 4G. This is more line of sight, more direct. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to need to have more towers. Because of the technology that's come out with the antennas are going to be smaller, but the line of sight will be a smaller line that will still maintain the distance that is needed. Now, you may be thinking about small cells, which are used on telephone poles around high-density areas, and that is a technology that's being used in Metro Atlanta, but it only covers a small amount, so there is a need for more of those because they're designed to cover a few blocks radius in a high-density area, not so much to project to the existing towers that are around. So that may be something that you're thinking of, because right now with the 5G, it is being launched in Dallas, and it's being launched in Atlanta, it's being launched in larger cities, which are the dense metropolitan areas. So that may be where that thought is with the smaller, more close together sites. So I think you're wondering, if 5G comes, are you going to need them all over the place? And that is not the intent, and that is not the design, and that is not anything that's been relayed to us. And what we are working on with 5G in the Metro Atlanta area are with the smaller cells. So I think it may be some time before you get 5G in Carrollton, specifically.
But it does seem, I know there's another one coming up next month, but, so it does seem like, you know, there's going to be more, not less, and from a standpoint of getting improved internet access out in the rural areas and so on, I'm for that. But on the other hand, we have to balance residential areas, which I've got one or two more questions on the alternative areas. So there's a site right there by the gas station and at the front of Travis Hill's property. Were any locations there considered?
I'm sorry, which area are you talking about?
Okay, if you go to the front of the Travis Hill property and right across the road, right there near that gas station, there's a vacant lot that's totally empty. It seems like enough room there for what, just as an alternative.
Well, the reason that we act, and I think you're referring to this lot right up here, possibly. I'm not sure, but I think that's the lot that you're referring to. We did look around there, but as I mentioned before, we have tried to look for an area or a property that would be conducive to construction and conducive to other commercial uses. So when we found these properties that were all zoned commercial that would have the property, we try to avoid putting them anywhere like that larger parcel. It could be that it could be developed for something else. We try to make the best use of land that's already zoned and already, appropriately uses, conditionally used, same uses. We look at those properties first before we look at properties that could be, potentially developed. And a lot of times property owners will tell us that, they have plans for their property and things like this. The way that we went about this, the further away that we got from the commercial, the closer we got to residential. We wanted to keep this as concise and in a location that was already zoned and being used as commercial uses. We find that most people are not opposed to things if they're already being used for those similar types of uses. Mm-hmm. So that's why we selected this property.
And Mr. Wilbur's property, I guess, is zone commercial now. I don't know how a residential place got zone commercial, but
it is zone commercial. So and I don't know which came first. I'm not sure if Mr. Wilbert's property, sounds like it might have been there first, and then the commercial all got rezoned around it. And I'm not sure how that exactly happened. I can't speak on that. But unfortunately, his is zoned commercial. And I mean, we didn't know in developing this that he didn't want to also develop that into, community development or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions from Mr. Wilbur.
Absolutely. Let me sit down and I'll be looking for that distance.
Okay.
I can answer your one question about how far the tower is going to be approximately from Mr. Wilvert's residence. I can tell you it's going to be at least 200 feet. And that is because the cell tower is going in the interior of the Travis Hill property. Mm-hmm. It's not going next to the property line.
Well, it's 180 some feet from the property line, so I imagine it would be 200 feet from my residence. Okay. And if I can, I just had a couple of questions for you, Mr. Boer. So the property that you have now is zone commercial, and how it got that way, since it's a residence, I'm puzzled, and we've talked about that, but you haven't found any.
The only thing I found out that it was done in 1983. It wasn't done recently.
Okay.
But I was not aware of it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. The monopole, would it have guy wires or anything out from it? Okay. Yeah.
I asked her how big it was, what the diameter was. She was not able to answer that question.
Okay. Approximately?
I would have to look at the tower design. We got this approved to go to 190 today. I don't have the specifics on the actual size of the pole that's going to go out there, but I can certainly get that for you. It is to be a standard monopole that you would normally Again, it just got approved today for the planning and zoning request last week.
Okay.
I can certainly get that for you.
Okay. I got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When they address you next time, if you'll come so we can hear you better, and so that the people listening in, so thank you.
As far as rezoning, you haven't, in prior years or now, taken steps to rezone back to whatever the
Actually, I
agricultural-
haven't done that because I was told that it would take longer than it would in terms of this decision. If it would make a difference in this evaluation, I would happily do that.
Yeah, okay. I have one more thing, but I yield to my other
Oh, I just
commissioners.
have a question for Ms. Hyde.
Okay.
Are we done with me?
Does the proposal meet
No,
our
just
land
sit right
use
there.
map? Ms. Hyde, does it meet the land use map?
A
that we
conditional
have?
use is not required to meet the future land use.
But
All-
it's, commercial does allow. cell
Commercial
towers.
does allow for a cell tower,
Okay.
yes,
That's what
with a conditional use permit.
Yeah, hold on, Janet. What year was this zone commercial? Do you know?
I don't know.
I mean, has it always, since Carroll County, you don't know for sure, but I think when I was in your office, Ben may know this. It
When I
looked
went-
like it was zone commercial as soon as they started.
Well, I went back and looked at Mr. Wilvert's property, and all the way back to 1983 zoning map, his was zone commercial.
83? Well,
Who's on
isn't that about the time we started with the zoning laws in the county?
The very first zoning map.
Okay, all right. So,
Zoning map that Mr. Wilvert's property, it was hard to see because it's old.
yeah,
But it appeared that his property was part of what's currently the Moorhead property, which is just the parcel that's just closest to Highway 166 and
Okay.
61. It looked like that was all one parcel at that time. So my assumption is that it was all zone commercial at one time, and then it got split. But again, that was hard to see because it's so old. But
okay. I was out there the other day looking at this, and apparently I must have the location of the pole off from what y'all are talking about. Is it going to be on the north side of the office building?
it's going to be on Travis Hill's property,
Right. I
off of
understand
Travis
that.
Hill Drive.
Okay, I know that, but that's a big piece of property.
It is.
And the secretary, I guess it was the secretary, took me out next to the building, and there was a stake driven in the ground, and she said that's where the tower was going. Is that true?
On the map where you see it on the site map, that's the location that we've been told that it's going to be.
Which will be behind Triangle Fleet. If you was in Pleasant, if you was at Pleasant Ridge Road?
Pleasant Hill.
Pleasant Hill Road.
Yeah.
So if you was there at Pleasant Hill Road, looking at Triangle Fleet, Travis Hill's directly behind it.
Right. So I was at his office. Is it going right next to his office? I mean, that's what it looks like here.
Come on up and bring the site plan. Let me
Yeah.
let me
Or
look
bring
at
Travis up here. He probably knows where it's going.
it. Yeah, Travis. Yeah, but she's got one right here.
Here's two
Let's
different ones
see.
that might be better to.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk.
You got an air photo there?
I do. It's directly behind Travis Hill's business. So from 166, Travis Hill's building will be in front of it.
Okay, so it wasn't that spot beside it where they
Right.
showed me the other day?
Yeah.
It's to the right of the, if I'm standing in front of your building, it's going to be to the right of your building.
Yes.
Okay, he's saying yes, you're saying no.
Right there is Travis's building.
Yep.
Right there's the tower. Here's the road. So you're gonna go past Travis's building and the towers to the right.
That's correct. That's what I'm talking about. This is his office building.
Well, I guess it depends on from which road.
Travis Hill Drive, it's right there.
Right. So from 166, it'll be directly behind Travis Hill's building, and from Pleasant Hill Road, it's going to be behind the
Moorhead Warehouse.
Moorhead warehouses.
Okay.
Are there any further questions from the Board of Commissioners?
I've got a question for Ms. Hyde. Ms. Hyde, do we have any other zonings on the books that would specifically fit a cell tower application, or does it simply fit under commercial corridor?
It fits under several different zoning classifications. Different heights are allowed in each zoning classification, and different setbacks have to be met. So there's a table in the ordinance that states all those setbacks and all those height requirements.
And I'm assuming because of your professional nature in presenting this to us, and you presented that you're recommending approval, you have taken all the steps to look at everything, and you feel confident or comfortable that this is something that staff feels comfortable with approving to present to us.
Yes, it does meet the criteria in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, I don't know if it's really a question or not, but I have some concerns, and this is probably for the future, and I think this is something that we...
Okay, let me wait. If you're not asking a question, what I'll do is I'll call for a motion and a second, and then we can move into discussion.
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Okay, do you know what frequencies that these 5G towers are operating in Atlanta and Dallas and those places? Yeah.
Specifically for those frequencies that are not actually going to be on this tower at this time, I would need to go look, but I believe they were, for the 5G towers, they don't, for the 5G frequency itself, I believe you and I had discussed that earlier, and your research had found that it was...
Well, they can go as high as 86 gigahertz.
Right. There's a range of frequencies that it can operate under. A lot of the antennas that are on the towers allow for 800 megahertz. Some of them allow for the 1700 megahertz. Again, it's all within the regulations of the FCC. I don't specifically know that answer for you because it's not specific to this tower at this time. But I would be more than happy to send that to you because I know you're concerned about 5G in the future. Right now at this time, this particular site is not slated for 5G currently. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. I just know that Verizon will comply within the FCC regulations that's out there. So they're not going to go with a technology that's not approved. Neither would AT&T or any other of the telecommunications companies. They are mandated that way. But I'll be happy to get all of that information for you.
Madam Chair, if you allow me to have a discussion point, like...
Right, you can, right now this is questions
Yeah.
only. Okay, so
Yeah.
if there's no more questions, I will look for a motion and a second.
I give the motion to approve, and that is based on...
No, just
okay.
a motion.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, is there any discussion?
I'd like to say 2 points. One is that my feeling is we need to strike a balance, and I feel in the interest of the broad base of taxpayers that we need to ensure good coverage. I do share Commissioner Fuller's concern about the future and the impact that it might have as we build more and more of these towers. I understand there's another one in my district coming up next month. I am concerned about that. One related thing that I just would like to take a minute to point out is the equipment that is hanging on these towers, and I'm hearkening back to my Board of Equalization days now. And I think the county might gain more property tax revenues, potentially, in that when these cell tower industries hang equipment on here, the county has a system in place where it is just a self-reported valuation of that equipment, and there's no verification or audit of those apparatuses and whatever is hung on there worth significant amounts of money. A monopole probably won't allow as much as the other type of tower, the lattice work. But as these cell towers proliferate throughout the county, I think it'd be my recommendation that the county do something to independently verify or audit the equipment that is on these towers and the equipment that is inside those adjacent buildings, so that we have some assurance that we're getting our property tax evaluation. I mean, the tax assessor's office has all kinds of systems in place to ensure that if you build a pool or if you add 4 feet to your garage or whatever, that they're right on top of it, and they come out and reassess, and the farmer and the resident like you and I have to pay, and we don't get to self-report the worth of our house. And on the industry side, I would like to have some type of check and balance so that we can ensure that proper valuation is placed on these, and that some haven't slipped through the cracks, that there aren't 17 apparatuses hung on the tower and we're only getting tax revenue off of 12. Right now there's no independent verification of that. And another thing that happens is that the cell tower industry requires or goes before the BOE and wants to accelerate as much as possible the depreciation on the equipment that is hung there. As a resident and as the farmers in my district, I'm sure that they would want to depreciate as quickly as possible the value of their home so that they can decrease the property tax. But we don't have a system, but the tax assessor's office has a system of assigning certain depreciation schedules to our homes and so forth. I just would like to have on the industry side a commensurate way where the county can provide an adequate check and balance to independently verify and audit to make sure that the industry side is operating just like we expect the residents and farmers to operate in the county. That's all.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. All right, Janet, we'll move to 11.2, rezoning of 456 Moat Road.
Yes, this is a consideration of owner applicant Anchor Property Solutions request, application Z-19-10-01, for rezoning from Ag to R2 for the purpose of combining property with other property already zoned R2. This is land lot 227 of the 10th District, parcel 088-0036, located at 456 Moat Road. This is in Commission District 1. Staff did recommend approval of this. Planning Commission also recommended approval, and the applicant is present.
Okay, the applicant would like to come forward. You have 10 minutes. Get my clock going.
I'm J.J. Latimer. I own the property at Moat Road. I'm requesting to go from Ag to R2 to sell a portion of the acreage off to the neighbor.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this? I'll ask again, is anyone else in favor to speak? Okay, at this time I'll close out the time. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of this? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the rezoning of 456 Moat Road? Okay, seeing none, I will see if there's any questions for the staff or the applicant. Okay, I see no questions from the commissioner, so I will look for a motion and a second.
Motion made.
Is there any discussion from the commission? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Great, thank you. Before we adjourn, I want you to join me in wishing District 2 Commissioner Clint Chance a very happy 40th birthday tomorrow. We have some cookies and lemonade if y'all would like to stay and join us. Now,
Big 4-0.
Thank you.
welcome.
I got shoes.
Is that going to, yeah.
So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a
Motion.
motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?